into this whole issue of border security. And, who's going to say that the borders are secure? You've got the House and Senate debating this issue, and it's really astonishing that in a country founded by immigrants, immigrant has somehow become a bad word.
My name is Jessica Nalback. I wanted to share my story of how I became living in Mexico, and I've been here almost 3 years. I grew up in foster care from the time I was 6. I was put up for adoption when I was 8 and bounced around in shelters, foster homes. Finally, I got tired of it, and I ran away when I was 14. And I was looking for love. And I ended up going to work in the fields with the migrants. They accepted me in, and I found a job, and I could work where nobody could find me. So I worked there until I was 18, and I was accepted into the Spanish culture. When I was 18, I ended up getting into some trouble, and I ended up becoming a drug addict, living on the streets. When I was 22, I was homeless, and I met my husband. I was actually selling weed. He was looking for weed. From there on, it just clicked. We ran into each other a couple extra times, and eventually we moved in together. Then we both got off the streets. We decided we wanted to do better for ourselves, and we got clean. We basically worked ourselves up from nothing to having a nice apartment and having 2 cars with 22 rims on both of them. I lost my first pregnancy when I was 5 months, and then 2 years later we had my middle son, and we were doing well. He ended up getting a better job that made really good money as a construction worker, building mansions on the beach. One day, out of the blue, my husband gets up to go to work and steps outside the front door, and ICE is there looking for somebody else that gave my address and said that they lived there. ICE was looking for this person. I told him, I've lived here for 5 years. The next thing you know, they're calling him in because he had a criminal background from 10 years prior. But because he already did his time 10 years ago and he had a criminal record, they took him. Right in front of my son. My son was 6 years old, and he had just woken up to go to school. He goes to the front door, and he sees me yelling out there. I had to control myself. So the only thing I could do was yell to them. I said, they're the bad people. Your father didn't do anything wrong. My son's sitting thinking his dad did something wrong. So I picked everything up. I sold everything I had within a month and a half, including one of my cars, packed everything into a truck, and took my 2 kids. At that time, I had one of my sons who was sick, in and out of the hospital. And then I had another son who was sick. He was born premature, and he was in and out of the hospital. In the United States, if you cannot be in the hospital with each one 24 hours a day, it's considered neglect. So I made the decision to bring my kids to Mexico and be with my husband. And I had him sign his papers, voluntary deportation. So at least in the future, he may have a chance to be able to go back, maybe. At the time that my husband was deported, I had just started working night shifts at a 7-Eleven. I was making $8 an hour. That's not even enough to pay my rent. So when I came, I was also suffering from postpartum depression. I had just had a suicide attempt maybe 3 months prior to them coming and taking my husband. When I got here, I was so mad. I was mad I had to come and live in the country. I was mad I could not stay in a country that does have a better education system than Mexico does. I was mad that I couldn't keep the life that I had. I tried to commit suicide 3 times in the first 6 months I was here. I had to go back to the States for 2 weeks to try to get my children's papers apostilled so that they could get their dual citizenship here. When I was back, I relapsed on drugs. My best friend came and found me, and she put me on a plane and said, go back to Mexico. So I got back on the plane, and I came back to Mexico. I got my kids their dual citizenship, and I got my permanent residency. I ended up finding a very good job, and I think my job saved me mentally. I work at a call center. The atmosphere that I'm around reminds me of the U.S., and I make better money than I can make in most places here in Mexico. I'm the only one that works right now because I tried to open a pizzeria for my husband, but it didn't work. It ended up getting robbed with my son there, and they robbed them at gunpoint. So I made the decision to close my pizzeria and to be the sole provider for my family while my husband stays at home. My mother-in-law, she gave us part of a house that she owns, and that's where we live at right now. My husband would love to go back. The day they tell him, give me 50,000 pesos and I'll take your butt across the border, he'll be back. My husband struggles right now more than I do. My husband's like, why don't you go back? You can go back and work, and send us money. What, on a minimum wage job? Having to pay to live over there and then send money back? What am I going to send back, 20 pesos a week? What I feel right now towards my country is so much anger. And I am embarrassed to say that I'm a U.S. citizen. And I'm embarrassed when I see people eating a salad because I know where those fruits and vegetables, who picked them. I see them living in their $1 million houses on the beach. I know who built them. They cannot say that if you deport everybody, what's going to happen in my country? American person does not want to work the jobs that immigrants work. I can say this because I've worked those jobs. When I was a minor, I worked from sun up to sundown, planting tomatoes and picked the orange trees. I know that these jobs are hard. Luckily for me, I was a U.S. citizen. I did manage to go back and get my college degree, but they don't have those opportunities because they're scared. They're living in the shadows.
Immigrants, we get the job done. Look how far I come. Look how far I come. Look how far I come. We get the job done. Look how far I come. Look how far I come. Look how far I come. Immigrants, we get the job done.